Hi, so I just got off of a conversation with Jon Slavet, and I was so happy after all these years to have another conversation with him about the subject of families and divorce and how to stay focused on the long term or the long game, the long term goals of a family. And one of the things that I really appreciated about him is his focus on this subject in terms of finding a way to support dads in this process and to really help folks think about their actions, slow down enough to think about what it is that they really want, not what they're fighting for or fighting or up against or conflicted about, but what it is they really want. And sometimes when in our conversation, he asked me to imagine what happens when people walk into my room if they come in to get some counseling or coaching from me or co-parent therapy from me. What do I usually see? And what I usually see is people who are really struggling with trying to identify what their emotions are and what they're going to do with them. And a lot of times when we have strong, intense emotions, we're very reactive. Jon and I threw around this idea about integrity. Like, how can you hold on to integrity through this whole process? So sometimes it might mean that we have to be superhuman, or we might have to actually use a skill like projecting um, what's happening in your life on a screen so that you can actually see it as a movie and what part do you want to play now? What character do you want to develop now? There's another chapter that's coming in your life. There's lots of transitions that you have in life, and this is one of them. This is a major one. So being really reflective um, and actually more distant and detached from your emotional self to the part of yourself that wants to create this new, maybe new persona that you were feeling that you weren't able to create in your marriage. That this is another way that you can think about it. I always love those techniques that help there be emotional detachment so you can actually see yourself and reflect on what you want to do next. What are the best and healthiest and most rational actions that you can take? But I don't want to assume that anyone here is always in a stage of initiating something like this. Sometimes we're recipients of these situations for very many reasons. Sometimes it's addiction, sometimes it's mental health issues, sometimes there's some kind of trauma that might have happened in life that makes it so that the relationship that we had in marriage isn't sustainable. So there's change and transition that happens for different reasons, and it might be happening to you. The One of the things that I offer people that work with me is I really like to have both parties in the room having a safe space to unravel some of this stuff before they go to higher levels of authorities, for instance, like lawyers or mediators, because there needs to be a place where there can be some emotional um, connection or at least understanding about what closure might look like. Not that you will absolutely get it, but there might be a need to just unravel some emotions together and not do that in a lawyer's office because that's not going to be very productive. But emotions are surrounding it, around the whole situation. So if you can actually take time to have some space to talk with your partner or the other parent around what's going on for them, you might be able to get a little bit more clarity about where you get triggered. And those would be things to work on yourself, is to figure out where you're getting triggered. Where are you actually not thinking soundly? This is important to know about yourself in this process. So I offer a service called discernment counseling where I identify what's happening in a relationship and to talk about that, finding whether it's something that people want to work on, and I would give them a roadmap of what I feel like they need to work on in order to save the marriage, or if they're feeling like, or one person is feeling like they don't want to continue the marriage, then I also give them a plan of how they can start separating slowly over time. You don't unravel a long term relationship. It's many, many layers that you start working on to make sure that there's some kind of health and stability and balance in the separation process. This is the healthiest way to do it if you have a family. So there's a lot of loss in this path, but there's also a lot of insight and other skill sets that are learned. And one of the most important is no matter what's going on in your situation and how it might feel like it's taking a while to settle down, the connection with your kids, whether it's for 5 minutes or a meal or a whole day or even half of the time, is so critical. And that's you in the state of mind where you're not triggered or you're not in tension about the situation that you're in. And I think that's something that Jon and I agreed on, was this whole concept of getting perspective, holding integrity, thinking about your next moves, thinking about your actions, processing your emotions is one of the ways to get through this and to find places that are going to hold you in that kind of process. So I hope that you have some information here to go forward and take a look at co-parenting, discernment counseling, your own counseling. These are all ways of having a healthy ending to a very important relationship.